This is Don't Panic, episode number 6, recorded July 23rd, 2013, on smartboards, PB&J sandwiches, and Khan Academy. And we are live, that's right. Take a deep breath, relax, don't panic, because we're here to talk all about the internets, the gadgets, and you. I'm Shaun Jennings, and I'm joined, as always, by my good friend, Dan Miller. I'm looking at the wrong camera. Dan, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Shaun. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to be here, and I'm especially excited because we have a wonderful guest with us today. I'm so glad we could have her on. And when better, an education expert herself and a recent graduate of Marist College. I've never heard of it, but I hear it's a nice place. Ladies and gentlemen, Kailee McEvoy. Kailee, how you doing?
I'm great, Shaun. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm glad we could have you on the show.
Oh, switching videos there. I like it.
We got to do the sky cam.
So necessary.
Well, you know me. I'm Mr. Unnecessary, so it's the least I could do. So this week's each week we kind of try to do a little bit of a big topic. And this week we're having Kailee on, and we thought, what is she better trained in than education and how that merges with technology? Kailee, what are your education credentials for our listeners to prove that you're an authority on this subject?
My credentials? I'm now certified to teach elementary ed and special ed in New York State.
Nice.
So, yeah.
So you are a legitimate teacher?
I could be, yes.
Oh.
I'm certified.
Okay. Well, with those introductions out of the way, why don't we jump into our very first story? Kailee, what do you want to hit on the document first?
Oh, let's open it up.
Because you're going to run. Last week we joked that I ran the show because it was my topic. This week you're running the show.
Oh, jeez.
Because it's your topic. So you pick the direction we go, and I'll just steer a little bit. So where do you want to begin?
All right. Do you want to start with your story, the technology in colleges?
Sure.
Maybe we can both touch a little bit on special services since we both work there. Absolutely,
yeah. It's because we have a lot of college folks in our audience, our very tiny audience, but our audience nonetheless. And all three of us are in college or recent college graduates. And so
all three of our listeners as well.
Exactly. So who better to talk about technology in colleges? We don't have a specific news story, but I thought it was interesting. I actually found out that Marist College actually purchased a 3D printer that's going to be installed and used on campus. But here's the interesting thing. Can you guess which department bought it?
Fashion.
Whoa, you got it. First shot.
They always get all the cool things that no one else gets to use.
Fashion's gonna use it to print shoes, I've been told. True story.
They also have the colored printers, so of course they would get the 3D printer.
They get the nice stuff. But I think it's interesting. I mean, what technologies, I guess I'll start with you, Dan. I mean, in your years of being a college student, what technologies did you kind of use the most or find the most relevant to you?
Oh, man. I mean, I used all the technologies.
All right, well, that's
being a student of technology, but I think the thing that I use that other people would also use, I was a big fan of the tablet in the classroom, like keeping your totally legal copy of your textbook that you didn't pirate for $0 on it, and like having the nice pens and like being able to write math equations in an infinitely sized notebook. That was the big killer thing for me, is I didn't have to worry about turning the page, although I did have to turn the page, that was one of my gripes, but I didn't have to worry about running out of pages. But I did have to turn the page, which always fundamentally surprises me, because why the hell do we have pages? It's like digital. I don't want to have to turn my pages in my notebook, or my Kindle books for that matter, Amazon, if you're listening. I just want to scroll infinitely. So I thought tablets were cool. I thought they were underutilized. I don't think that the light from Steve Jobs hit all of the education administrators yet. I'm not sure it will. What do you guys think? Are tablets the great innovation in education that they were supposed to be?
I am slowly warming up to them. At first, I thought they were just giant phones, and I was not a fan of them. But the more exposure I get to them, the more I think that they're pretty cool, and I see the benefits now. And I'm actually in the market to buy an iPad in the next couple weeks, once I start making some money. But
yeah, I don't, like, I was the same way. Like, it's just a giant phone, or why would I use this if I can type things faster on my my laptop?
Yeah.
But it's a different experience. It's very hands-on and close-up.
Yeah, I think for the portable aspect, it seems like it's a lot easier to take on the go and use wherever you are.
Yeah.
So, Shaun, I know you've had a lot of experience with various iPads.
I have. I've used almost every tablet under the sun, and you know, the only real issue, and I don't want to jump the gun because you picked out an excellent story on this subject, was I just don't like when people grab iPads, throw them in the classroom, and say, "Here you go." You know, there has to be a plan. There has to be some implementation. Just putting technology in classrooms isn't good enough. I don't want to jump the gun on our next story, but other than that, I think tablets are great in the classroom. The other big thing I found to be helpful as far as technology in college goes is collaboration, which has completely changed my life. I remember back at freshman year, doing group projects and things of that. And of course, as you get farther on in college, they become bigger projects with more people, and things like Google Docs and Facebook and all these services have just made it so easy to do PowerPoints and Word documents all on the go when it's convenient for you. I mean, I did an entire presentation without seeing the people in the presentation once, other than in the class when it was assigned, and it worked out well. So, as long as you're with the right people who understand it, I think collaboration was really the killer app for me in college.
That's a good point. I didn't even think about that. That was so fundamental that I didn't even think it was technology.
And I hesitated at first. I really did. I mean, when I came in to college, I didn't use Google Docs. I didn't use any of those things. And over time, I slowly started to learn the tips and tricks. And then by the end, I don't know how I could have lived without it.
Yeah. I remember we were doing a some history project, and two of the group members introduced everyone else to Dropbox, and they were just floored by how cool it was. I don't know why we didn't use Google Docs, though. That probably would have been smarter.
Well, hey, anything is better than nothing, right?
Yeah.
Kailee, were there any killer apps for you? Anything that really made a big difference?
To be completely honest, in my major, we didn't use technology as much as most majors probably did. A lot of it was getting together and making posters or doing some kind of activity, hands-on activity. So a lot of it wasn't technology, but for my core classes, I did use Google Docs a lot. I still don't know how to use it, but I think it's really cool. I think it's a great idea, but every time I open it, I'm like, what the heck is this? A lot of my group projects were done through Facebook threads, which seems really mundane and not exciting, but it's really useful to be able to just have a constant communication with everyone, and everyone has it on their phones now, so it's just, you don't even have to text, you could just Facebook everyone all the time. It's a good way to collaborate, sending links and stuff. So that's what I found.
Yeah.
I think Google Docs is the future.
Yes. Despite our Microsoft episode, I don't know, Microsoft could still come back and win in the collaborative online space, I think. I wouldn't count them out. But can we talk about the digital textbooks thing?
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it.
I mean, I don't know anything about them because I've never had one that wasn't a pirated PDF, which is a pirated PDF is at most just as good as the physical copy, but usually inferior because you don't get that serendipitous leafing through the sections you're not even supposed to read sort of thing. But you see all these mock-ups from the iBook textbooks, and they've got these interactive features on the page, so you can instead of just seeing the picture of a cell, like you can zoom in to it and like watch as the magnification levels increase and like move the picture around and see the stuff around it. And like if you're doing anatomy, I imagine it could be really cool because you're studying a certain part and you can just like zoom it out and then see the broader context right from that picture. Like all that stuff sounds really awesome, especially for the younger folk, which we can segue into that maybe, unless we don't want to segue, but I'll leave that to you guys. But I've never heard of anyone using it. Have any of you guys ever used them?
I think the issue that I have is that seamless. The issue I have is a couple things. One is just being locked into a certain platform, and that's why pirated PDFs work, because they always work. But I think, and I sort of split textbooks into two categories. There's your War and Peace text only, and then there's your math or science with a lot of images and a lot of text. I've purchased the text only versions on my Kindle, and I have an old e-ink Kindle, and that's fine. It's like reading a regular book. But when you start getting with the images and the pictures, not once have I found a digital textbook that is noticeably cheaper than the print version. And to me, the technology isn't there where I see an advantage in getting the digital version. All those, like you talked about, and they always have the demo where it's the the flashy and you can spin the skeleton around. But I feel like those are gimmicks, and I feel like very few textbooks actually use those. So one day maybe, but today it's like you got to buy a color tablet. E-ink's not going to work. So you have to buy a nice tablet. You have to buy into an ecosystem. You have to spend as much as you're spending on a print version for the digital version. I'm not ready to take the leap, put it that way. But Kailee works in this field, so we should probably refer to her judgment.
I've never actually seen that in person. I've just heard of it. I think it's really cool. I think it could be something, but I think it hasn't really come all the way yet.
Yeah, why can't I buy one? Maybe I can, and I'm just not looking in the right spots.
I've never actually seen one. I don't know, but I think that would be really cool, especially with the pictures and everything. But
yeah,
most of the digital textbooks I've seen are just really ghetto versions with a lot of text and an image just kind of placed in there. I mean, there's so few where they've really gone all out and done the digital, and then most of them are iPad specific. So if you have an Android tablet or you want to use it on your desktop, they finally launched iBooks for desktop. So at least Mac users have something, but Windows users, I mean, it's so fractured. And once you start getting into this interactive stuff with formatting, and it's so tough to do in this market that, unless some kind of standard is reached, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But with that, as Dan attempted to do, why don't we segue into our first actual story here. Technology integration for elementary schools. I thought this was a really great article because it sort of plays back into what I had mentioned earlier, where it's important not just to take and put technology in classrooms, but to actually have a plan while you're doing it. Because if you just throw it in, what's the point? Mm-hmm. So in this article, there's a big list. Kailee, I don't know if there's anything here specifically you want to mention.
Let's see.
I think
what you said, that you can't just put the technology in the classroom. I've seen it both ways. I've seen classrooms that just have technology, but they don't use it, or they don't use it in the best way possible. And then there's the classrooms that have nothing and could use any sort of technology, even a computer. I have a friend who was student teaching in a classroom that was called the Classroom of the Future, and they had I think they had an iPod Touch for every student, they had netbooks for every student, and they had a smart board. I think that might have been it. But she said that they didn't use it properly. They would just, during recess, they would give the kids the iPods to play with. They weren't using it for educational purposes. And there's so many cool apps out now for education that they could have been using. But I think the teacher was just kind of thrown into it and didn't know what she was doing. So
you think the problem is in training the teachers?
I think, for the most part, a lot of the technology could be used in a better way than I've seen it. And, I mean, if the teacher is older and doesn't know the technology, they might just avoid it because they know what's comfortable and what's easier for them. So I think there's a lot of obstacles to overcome. And I think budgets are a really big problem.
In my hometown, there was a magnet school, and the big draw was that everyone got a laptop. But I don't think they ever used it besides, like, oh, now everyone can write their papers, and now everyone can look at their grades online, which you can do if you have your own laptop, you know.
Yeah.
So I agree that oftentimes it's thrown in without any real thought to how is this actually useful. But then on the other hand, we always complain when it's not there, you know. So
yeah, so I've seen both sides. Like I observed in like Poughkeepsie City School District, there's maybe 2 computers for the whole high school. They never work.
Wow.
They don't have printers. And then you go into like Arlington District, and every kid has a netbook. So it's like there should be some kind of balance there, where they have the netbooks, but they're not using them for anything practical. And Poughkeepsie doesn't even have computers to share.
yeah.
You know, and I think, you know, I'll give, you know, a little bit of positivity boost in here and say that, you know, a lot of this is new technology, and with any new technology, it takes time for you to figure out how to use it. I think it's important that when teachers are being trained, especially in college, that they be exposed to these technologies. And, you know, curriculums are slow to change, so I don't think we'll see that overnight. But with this technology changing so quickly, such as e-textbooks, as we were talking about, I think it's just a matter of time before they figure it out. You know, they want to be first, they want to be new, and you got to give them credit for that. At least, you know, if they have the money, they don't shy away from it. But it's just a matter of figuring out and training, you know?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of trial and error, too. They'll put something in one classroom in a school and see how it works out, and then if it benefits the students, they'll try it in other classrooms. Like my first student teaching placement in Arlington, there was one classroom in the school that had a smart board, and the teacher didn't know how to use it, so she never did. So no other teachers got smart boards because she was the tester and she didn't use it to the full ability.
Have you ever seen technology used well in the classroom, Kailee?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not all negative. In special education especially, I think is where it really is important. My second student teaching placement was in Anderson, which is a school for autism, and that's where I saw the most technology. It's a private school. Every classroom had a smart board, and they used it for everything, and it was really well done. They would use it. They would have the kids use it, the students. Oh, I did not know what you were zooming in on. I was like,
No, I'm opening up our next story in the rundown.
I see that. All I saw was a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and I was very confused.
A perfect segue into talking about this other article, which is smart boards and special education. I want to remind all of our listeners as well that all these links should hypothetically be posted on our website when the show goes live. And that special needs is definitely where technology is very cutting edge, mainly because they're the ones who need it the most. But it's also, I think, where people are more willing to experiment. I mean, I spent a year working in the special services office at Marist College, and anytime I wanted to try any new technology, I was never told no. You know, I mean, they were willing to try anything. And I think that's really, really important, that sort of adventurous spirit of getting excited about technology and what it can really mean. And that's, you know, we start things in special education, and it's amazing how they end up rolling out to sort of the general education populace. You know, we did that at Marist College with some of the software. We ended up buying enough for the whole campus to use. So I think it's important, and we see that with smart boards. So,
what's a smart board?
I've definitely seen more technology in special education than in general ed. Because they're more willing to try anything to get the students to understand the material and to be on the level that they need to be.
Dan, what was that?
my question is, what is a smartboard? Because I've actually never seen one used.
Really?
No.
That is an excellent question, Dan, and I'm glad you asked it. Kaylee, what is a smartboard?
It's an interactive whiteboard. It's like up where your whiteboard would be in your classroom, and it's connected to the internet, so you can type on your computer and it'll show up on. It's like a projector, but then they have like pens you can write on it. It's touch screen. It has all kinds of different apps that you can use.
Okay.
Like Board Maker is my favorite because you just get to make like fun PowerPoint type slides for your projector.
Interesting.
Did that answer your question?
I guess so, yeah. I've had these in a couple of classrooms that I've been students in, and it had never been used. Or actually even turned on.
Yeah. Most of them at Marist are either not used or only used as projectors.
Right, yeah.
But there's so much more. There's so much you could do on it because it's touchscreen, and you can write on it instead of writing on the whiteboard. And then you can do fun stuff and play games.
I
really
playing
like
games.
Yes. So do I.
Shaun, what is this?
Oh, that was a picture of people using a smartboard, Dan.
Oh.
Did you miss it?
Now it's peanut butter and jelly again.
And now we're back to peanut butter and jelly.
Alright, that's fine, that's fine.
Now you're back to my face.
In high school, we didn't have projectors in any of the classrooms except one.
Really?
And yeah, so there were no PowerPoint presentations for me in high school, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Or no, if you wanted to do a PowerPoint, you had to like rent out the like projector cart and like wheel it in.
Yes.
And that didn't look like fun.
That's what amazed me about my high school was we had, like you, I think we had 2 projectors on 2 different carts. And none permanently in the classrooms, but we had a cart of like 30 iPads they bought, and no one ever used them. I swear, they sat there and collected dust, but like you couldn't get a projector. I mean, it's just so strange that I think, you know, and I'm the first to admit I do it, where, you know, you jump the gun on a technology. Ooh, iPad! Oh my God, I got to get one of those. And
Yeah, so when we were in high school, those were brand new, right?
Oh yeah, and they, right when they came out, they put in for a grant and got 30 of them in a big cart and this whole thing. And
So I'm sure no one even knew how to use them or what they were for.
Nope, not at all. So I don't know. I guess you just have to be careful.
Well, my high school was brand new the year I was a freshman, and they put smart boards in almost every classroom. It's ridiculous. Like, less than half of my teachers would use them, but they were there, so I was exposed to them early, and I thought they were really cool.
At least you had the option, right?
Yes. And in one of my classrooms, one of the education classrooms at Marist had one of the portable smart boards, and for every class in there, it was always like our final project to come up with a smart board presentation and present it. So I got some exposure to it. They're pretty cool.
Now, Kaylee, I see you put a video in the rundown. What is this about? Introduce it before we play it.
Yes, let's not watch it yet. It's about DynaVoxes, which I'm sure, Shaun, you've had some experience with.
I have
Special services?
no idea. We don't no, we don't use these.
No, you've never seen them in special services?
No.
Oh, they're really cool. They're like these devices that you can use that there's all different kinds of there you go. There's all the different kinds. And they're for nonverbal people who either physically can't speak or emotionally won't speak or have some kind of disability where they don't speak. And they have different either symbols or letters, and it gives you a voice basically. And so I saw those at Anderson at my student teaching placement. A lot of students had them. They would just have them around their neck, and it was just completely normal. You'd ask them a question, and they would just type in their answer, and it would speak for them if they were nonverbal. So that, I think, is the future. And the video
awesome.
that was very inspiring and sweet.
All right. Well, we're going to attempt to play the video using my shiny new technology.
Technology.
But I make no guarantees that works. So let me try something here.
The headphones are coming off.
Oh, it's about to get real.
When Beth Ann was young, we had to develop a system, and it was raise my eyes for yes, lower my eyes for no. So you were caught always asking her yes and no questions. Very frustrating for us, for her. When Beth Ann first got her device, it was unbelievable. Finally, Beth Ann had a voice. She could talk for herself. We didn't have to ask her yes and no questions.
I am a much deeper person and thinker than yes or no. DynaVox lets me express those thoughts and feelings.
Now my daughter can tell me what she wants and how she's feeling.
Poetry is now an important part of my life.
Emotionally, Beth Ann now has the words love, hate, dream, wish. You know, she can tell us all these things. She has her own set of emotions. She can tell us how much she loves her dog, or how much she hates schoolwork, or this person, her brother's driving her crazy, or things like this. So it's all there. It's all in the DynaVox. It's all in her own words now.
It's hard to imagine what it would be like to live without my AAC device.
It's just absolutely unbelievable. It's definitely a godsend.
Okay, there you go.
Wow. This is an interesting tactic there, Shaun.
Yeah, I figured out how to get YouTube videos to play and not look ridiculous, but I have not figured out how to make them have audio. So
Okay.
I'm going to work on that. But nonetheless, a really cool video.
Yeah. So is it just you interact with it by like touchscreen tapping?
Yep. Yep. There's buttons, so they'll have like different common words, or some of them have letters if they can spell and type out a whole phrase. But they'll just type in the sentence and hit send, and then it'll vocalize it.
Oh, cool.
So it's very cool. And they all have different voices, which is funny. Walking down the halls of Anderson, you'd hear different, like, hi, hello, how are you? All the different like, robot voices, and like I knew which one was which kid's.
Oh, wow. I wonder how that works. Is everyone unique, or do you like pick your voice?
It's probably like a GPS where you can pick which voice you want it to have. I assume, but I'm not sure.
That'd be really cool.
My GPS has a British accent. As it should.
Yes, most certainly.
All right.
Shaun, what other cool technologies did you have in special services?
Well, Kaylee, let me tell you. First of all,
you worked with those cool pens?
I did. Well, first of all, I want to tell everybody listening that they should go to facebook.com/Mara Special Services and like them, because I used to work there. So you should also like Marist Archives, because I work there now, but you should also like Special Services. I have to be equal. You know, we actually worked with a lot of technology. I mean, the main things we worked on were Read and Write Gold, which is software by TextHelp that, as I mentioned before, started in special services, and we actually bought enough licenses to put it on every computer on campus, and any Marist student can download it. And that includes tools like reading speech aloud on websites and documents, tools, dictionary tools, spelling tools, creating speeches from chunks. I mean, it was like a huge toolbox of digital tools, which was great. We also used LiveScribe smart pens a lot, which sort of track as you write and not only digitize as you write, but also record audio, great for lectures and things like that. And then, we had, it was really great because, those sort of were the technologies that the majority of our students use. But we had, one student who, my mind just drew a blank, which isn't helpful, but we had students, a few students, each of them had their own unique set of issues, and we had to come up with a custom technology solution to solve their problem, really. And that was one of the joys I had doing that job, was it is sort of a creative problem solving, and I give teachers a lot of credit for having to come up with ways to solve problems that you can't anticipate and you would have never expected. And what's even better is when those solutions can be used outside of that one student. So I was really happy when we were able to, we had one student who had to do, who wanted to do an interview, but had a fear of, I don't know if it was planes or it was something like that. Anyway, they didn't want to fly out to the school just for the interview. It was on the West Coast. So we worked with them and we set them up on a Skype interview. It's things like that that we did a lot of. So that's, that's mostly what we did in special services. And it was a lot of fun.
Very cool.
Did that answer your question?
It did, yes.
I'm glad.
I knew you were like the technology liaison, so.
That my self-made-up title, yes. No, and it's technology is kind of an amazing thing in that it runs the spectrum from being helpful to being hurtful, and it's Kaylee's job as an educator and my job working in special services and even Dan's job to make technology more helpful than it is a nuisance or trouble. Just giving someone a laptop can actually cause more trouble than it helps. But if you work with them and create solutions for them, that's really where you get more on that helpful side. And ultimately, to get the most helpful is to work one-on-one with these students. So, that's always why I've never been a fan of these schools that sort of mass implement something across, what was it? Every so often there's, the Atlanta school district bought 10,000 laptops. And I'm like, is that really the best?
Mm-hmm.
I think the city of LA just bought like 20,000 iPads or something.
And they were going to buy Chromebooks, so that was a huge controversy. I was going to bring that up. Chromebook versus iPad for the classroom.
Well, we can talk about that. A lot of these businesses see getting into the schools as a way to get kids invested in their ecosystems early. That's why Apple doesn't need to do iBooks, but by selling textbooks, you're getting kids on iPads, which means they're going to buy iPhones, which means they're going to buy Macs, and it creates sales. Same with Chromebook. It's going to get them using Google Apps. It's going to get them in Gmail. It's going to get them in Google Drive. So I don't know, Kaylee or Dan, what your thoughts are, but do you think that's an issue? Should we be embracing more open standards? Is it the rights of these businesses to do that? And should school districts be concerned about the products they're buying in the long term, how it relates to their students?
Yeah, so I am a programmer, and I like to tinker around with computers. But the thing that worries me, though, is like so much of my knowledge was self-taught, just because you can play around with computers, but you can't really play around with iPads in the same way. You can play around with Chromebooks, actually. So I was disappointed the Chromebook ran out, but you can't like look at your iPad and be like, I'm just going to write a program for this, because you have to get your $100 Apple developer account and submit it to the App Store and hope that Steve approves and all that stuff, and hope that your credentials don't get stolen like they did this week. But like in a real computer, you can like open up the command line and write programs and break it and fix it and really get like your hands on how this works, which is most of the value of a computer for me. And the whole industry is moving towards these computers that you can't actually break, which is good, but I think bad. So I'm really excited to see what school districts or educators do with like the Raspberry Pi, these little cheap $20 computers that you can just plug into a TV and mess around with. Like, I think that would almost be better than everyone just getting a laptop. Because the other thing with a laptop, they're going to lock it down. You can't install anything. You can only like use Internet Explorer 7 and all that crap so that they don't break, which is their prerogative. But it's nice to have computers that you can break. And like the next Steve Wozniak is going to have a much harder time because Steve Wozniak actually had to build his own computers in order to use one. So, like, those guys of that generation had such a like a more intuitive grasp of how computers work than anyone does today, because they're much more complicated. But it would be nice to get back to these simple computers that don't really have fancy displays or touch screens or any of that stuff, so that you can just, an 8-year-old kid can just break it and learn how computers work.
I'm going to say I partially agree with you. In that, I think it's important for some students to have access to real computers that, you're right, they can break and they can open up and they can work with, but there are a lot of students who aren't programmers and a lot of kids who aren't as into computers as others are. And I do think it's important, to go back to the sort of individual solutions for individual students, but I just think that it's important for some students to have the option of an iPad, especially at younger ages, but even at older ages when that's all they're going to use or need. I just think it's important to have a balanced approach, because if you handed me a Raspberry Pi, not only would I have no idea what I was doing, but I don't even know if I would care that much to do anything with it. So
right.
I think it just depends on the person.
I think this goes back to, you can't just hand someone something. Like, the Raspberry Pis are going to be next to useless if you don't like almost build it in somehow. I'm a big fan of the idea of using programming to teach things, because there's like no better way to prove that you understand something than to teach a computer how to do it, because they're very picky and particular and pedantic about anything. So if you could like write a program to solve like 2-variable algebra equations, like, that would be awesome. And you have a much deeper understanding of how 2-variable algebra equations actually work than someone who just like, all right, isolate one to one side and solve for A and blah blah blah, and they're just going through the steps, and which is all that a computer does, but you have to like really lay it out, because the computer has actually no intelligence at all.
Well, now I know, Dan, why you're so much smarter than me. Kaylee, what are your thoughts on this?
You completely lost me at Raspberry Pi. I have no idea what that is. I'm going to be completely honest.
Pi now, right?
And then you start talking about algebra, and I just kind of was gone. Can someone explain Raspberry Pi to me?
Shaun, if you can cover, I can go grab mine.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So Raspberry Pi is like Dan said, it's a $20 computer, and essentially it's just the basics of what a computer is. None of this fancy cases, fancy anything. And it doesn't run Windows, it doesn't run Mac. It's just a little processor and a few little other parts on a little tiny thing. And it's really designed to be played with and to be added to things and to be created. It's not something you'll bring home, plug in, and start surfing the internet. It's really sort of a test tool for programmers in a way. And the question with Raspberry Pi is, what can you make it into? And it's actually interesting because there are a lot of schools.
Well, it was designed for schools. That was the reason it was originally made. Yeah, it was supposed to be an educational thing. So it's just a little computer. It's supposed to be $25. Has 2 USB ports, Ethernet, and HDMI. And it runs Linux. I think, Shaun, I heard you saying that. But it's really simple, so it doesn't have all the complexities of like your laptop with, stuff we don't have to get into. But it's much easier to like just poke around at it and be like, oh, so there's this thing called a processor, and there's this thing called binary, and and understand how computers work. And if you break it, you can just reset it, and it's back to new. And you can also use these little pins to like hook up lights or motors or things like that, so you can make robots or self-driving cars, things like that.
Wow, that's really cool. I never even heard of that. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, it's kind of like a starter computer, and I've heard projects, everyone from they made one that controlled their microwave to I heard one. I think one of my favorites I've heard is that some guy took an old-fashioned radio took out all the tubes and all the stuff inside, put in a Raspberry Pi, and all it does is stream old radio shows out through this old radio. You know, it's just cool things like that. I mean, the possibilities are really endless, and I love when kids can be creative. So I think the Raspberry Pi is great for that.
I was actually very germane to this conversation at a presentation today at work from this organization called Citizen School. And what they do is they extend the school day, like, permanently and requiredly. I don't know how to say that, but you have, it's not an option. In like high needs, like high risk school districts. And so it's like, instead of school going from whenever to 3, it's whenever to 6. And they have a bunch of stuff that they do, but one of the things they do is called apprenticeships. And they have these like people come in from companies like Google and Facebook and teach a thing, like help the kids make like a self-driving car, which is what Google does, and I wish I was in that school district. And, you know, rockets, or like painting, or, you know, trial defense lawyers, and you do like mock trials and all this stuff. But one of the cool ideas we came up with was you could use something like this, but that's not, you know, that's great, like, but again, it's technology for technology's sake. But you could do something like an interactive art display. So you can have this thing with these little pins hooked up, and it's like, you know, some kind of like diorama or something that actually moves and isn't static. You know, it could be anything like that. And you can, I think they have a really interesting model, and I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this, Kailee, where we don't have the teachers that know about Raspberry Pis or trial defense lawyers, but, you know, if you can bring in outside people for a couple hours, a lot of companies have volunteer leave, paid volunteer leave that they encourage or even possibly require you to use. So I think it was a cool, like, way to use this untapped free labor market, basically, to help out kids in high needs areas.
I think that's really cool. I wish that I had something like that.
Yeah.
As a kid, so that I understand computers now as an adult, so that when my laptop dies, I don't just sit there and cry at it.
It's not necessarily like technology literacy. It's more like whatever you're interested in. Like, if you're like, there's an entrepreneurship class, and they actually pitched to investors as high school students, and that was really cool. Or art classes where, you know, an actual artist is the one given the apprenticeship. And it's just this, actually, I should change my pick now that I think about it. But anyways, there's, like, I don't know how true this is, because I've only read about it cursorily, but there's this idea that classrooms were built for, like, the agrarian into industrial society, where, like, you learned all the things necessary. At first, you learned only the basic things necessary, and then you got out early and worked on the farm. And then it was like, well, we need to teach math and science so that they can work in the factories and, you know, manufacture things. And now we don't manufacture anything anymore. And there's this idea that education should be more personalized, because there's a really great TED Talk on this that I'll link to, but basically, you know, there are so many people throughout history that have just, you know, fallen off. Like, they don't teach dance in schools. Dance is seen as like a secondary, you know, yeah, it's like so much, it's inferior to math, it's inferior to English, it's inferior to, like, classical music and, you know, painting. And it's not even offered, you know, that anywhere I've heard of. But why is that? Like, and it's, you know, resources and budget and all this stuff, but it's interesting that I don't think that math and science, and, you know, science much so less so than math and English, but, you know, that those top tier subjects are necessarily should be given as much time as they are. And I think this citizen school thing is a good way to hack around that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think education is definitely an individual thing. So if a student's not going to benefit from having a focus in science all throughout their high school and middle school career, then why should they have to do that? If they're really talented at one thing, they should be given the opportunity to do that. So I could see that being very successful. Seems cool.
Well, I think this has been an incredibly successful discussion on technology and education. I feel like we could go all night, but sadly, I have to go to work in the morning, so we can't. So what I will say is, why don't we go down the line, and I'll give everyone a chance to say any last thoughts or opinions or summaries on technology in education. And we'll start with Dan, and we'll work our way down the line. Dan?
So I kind of just did mine, but I definitely think that with all this technology, we can make things more personalized. You can enable students to kind of pursue their own interests and not necessarily, be guided 100% of the time by a teacher. And that's where I see technology playing a role, not necessarily in everyone having a laptop.
Okay, Kaylee.
I just remembered one thing that I wanted to mention, but didn't, so I'll just give a brief overview. Schools now do virtual field trips, which I think are the coolest thing ever. They'll use either like Google Earth or Skype, and they'll take a field trip somewhere or talk to someone from another country or somewhere on the other side of the world. And I think that's a really cool use of technology in the classroom, to see places that isn't in their budget to go visit physically. But anyway, I think that's really cool. You should look that up, virtual field trips. But to conclude, I think that technology, when used right, can be very beneficial in the classroom, but if it's just thrown in there and not used properly, I think that it can get in the way of traditional learning.
Very well said. And I suppose I would sum up my thoughts by just saying it's important for teachers not to teach by technology, but rather through technology. And by what I mean is, technology is not a crutch that holds up your lesson plan. It is instead an extra tool in your toolbox. And I think that's really important for educators to remember. And I'll just end on two quick thoughts before we move into our picks. One, Dan mentioned that great TED Talk, so we'll include that in the note. I want to tease this past week on CNN, Morgan Spurlock does a show called Inside Man, which is excellent, and you should watch it. It's on their website, cnn.com. But this week, he did Inside Education, and he taught at a school in Finland, and he taught at a school in New York City. And it was an excellent look inside the state of current education. So if you're at all interested, I recommend you watch that. The other thing I want to end on is one of my favorite stories from Marist. It was freshman year, and I, lucky me, had an 8 a.m. English class with old man Professor Bill.
I was there.
Dan knows where this is going. And so I was first semester freshman, groggy as hell, half asleep, stumbling into class at 8 a.m., out of it, and I'd be like sitting there, not even like basically asleep, and I'd look over, and there was this guy on his laptop programming Linux at 8 in the morning. He'd have like 3 different windows up. He looked like he was hacking a mainframe, like you were watching a movie. There was code going by and all this stuff, and that young man grew up to be Dan Miller. And that's one of my favorite stories, that I couldn't be bothered to wake up, but Dan was there with his big laptop programming away in Linux. So.
Not paying attention, so...
No, but at least you got something out of it. I got a little extra sleep. You got, I don't know, a career. So with that being said, we'll wrap up our talk on education, move on to our picks of the week. Now that I have video playback, one of these weeks I'm going to make graphics for all this. It'll be like, picks of the week.
Oh my
Just
god.
wear the funny hats.
Or we could do funny hats and mustaches. Either way, we're going to have fun with it. All right, so for our picks this week, why don't we do them in reverse order as we just did that? So I'll go, and then we'll have Kaylee, and we'll end with Dan. So my pick this week, I wanted to kind of play into our education theme, and I thought, what technology has helped me in education? A lot of people know Google Docs and Evernote, some of these bigger services, so I came up with a service I really like that I don't know if a lot of people know about, and that would be Wunderlist. Now, when it comes to to-do lists, everybody has their own favorite app. I get it. Each app does certain things better than others, and there's some people you'll never persuade that X is better than Y, and that's fine. But I have a personal favorite I like, and I'm going to share it with you, and it's called Wunderlist.
That's fine, but you're wrong, says Shaun Jennings.
Yeah, no, I'm always...
I like the funny hat.
And it's Wunderlist with a U, W-U-N-D-E-R, list.com. And really the thing, and now I can finally use the behind the back shot here, although I don't know really how well you can see my monitor. But the great thing about Wunderlist, in my opinion, is A, that it's extremely multi-platform, and that it is available on everything that anyone would ever use: Android, iPhone, iPad, Mac, Windows,
Blackberry?
online. What is that? I don't... Blackberry? I've never heard of that.
Hey.
No, it is not available for BlackBerry.
Oh,
But
so
it is
you're
for
wrong.
the important thing. Not for Windows Phone, which is kind of a bummer, because that does exist. But it's great because it's synced across all your devices. The other great thing about... And now I'm going to actually switch to something where you can actually see it instead of my blurry behind-the-back camera. Other great things that are... A, it's really good to look at. It's really pretty, so I'll give them credit for that. But it's also just really simple. I don't need flags and tags and all kinds of crazy stuff. I really just need a list that I can just look at and know blank is due tomorrow. And this app does it really well for me. It includes integration if other people use the app. It includes the ability to take notes. And, of course, it's all free. So... I am a big fan. I use it on my iPhone. I use it if I'm just on a loose computer. You can just plug right in. So my pick this week is Wunderlist. I think it's a really great to-do list app. I highly recommend it, or at least give it a shot, mainly because of the multi-platform and just that it's simple. Because that's all I really want in an app is simplicity. Wunderlist, WUNDERLIST.com. Kaylee, your pick of the week.
Am I up? All
You
right.
are up.
So going off of my BlackBerry comment, I'm going to briefly talk about BBM and how it's supposedly someday coming out for iPhone and Android. I've been hearing this rumor for a long time, and they have nothing to show for it. But I'm really excited about it because I have a BlackBerry, and no one else in the world does, so I never get to use BBM. And so I'm going to convince at least one person to switch over and BBM me, because I am traveling internationally and I won't be able to text for free anymore. So I think this is the future. I think BlackBerry's making a comeback. Just throwing that out there. That's my pick of the week.
Why do you think BlackBerry's making a comeback?
Because the BlackBerry 10 is awesome. Oh, thank you. BlackBerry 10 is really cool. They are making like a BlackBerry car I read about the other day, which is pretty cool. And BBM is just, it's
They're
great.
making a
and I really wanna
BlackBerry
use it.
car?
Yeah, on this website they're talking about,
What?
let's see.
Out of
The
control.
one platform BlackBerry is poised to tackle independently is cars.
What?
Yep.
Go them.
Yeah, they're doing GPS, voice communication, transcription for hands-free messaging, and lots more could quickly find their way into car dashes.
So you're
I
betting
think-
big on BlackBerry.
I'm sticking with it for now. I'm also getting an iPad so that all of my stubborn friends on iPhones can iMessage me, because I know none of them will download it for me. Hopefully
I said I
someone out
would.
there will BBM me someday.
I will BBM you, but you're the only
There you
person I
go.
know who owns a BlackBerry, so
Exactly.
it's going to
So
be me and you.
Great. That's all I need is one person so I can use the fun smiley faces.
Excellent. Okay, well, Kaylee's pick this week, BlackBerry Messenger for iPhone and Android when it happens eventually.
Coming.
Dan, your pick of this week.
Alright, I have two picks because Colby's not here, so I'm stealing his. Pick number one is Khan Academy, which is really great for self-directed learning. And this can be anything from like the 2008 housing market crash to like calculus. And one of the new things they have that I think a lot of people don't know about is this practice session. So they've always had the videos that you can watch and there are comments, but now they have this great practice thing. I should probably try to show it to you. But basically, it's like a Google map, a knowledge tree of like everything for a given subject. So you can see for calculus, like it starts off in addition, and then from addition you can learn subtraction and multiplication and division, and then from those things you can keep going, and it just like trees down until you're in like calculus. And calculus itself has so many different like things that depend on one another, like all the different rules and transformations that you learn one, then you learn the next one, and what you do is you click on these little icons on this map, and it brings up these practice problems, and you just do them over and over again, and it has a way, this leaf system, of telling you like how well you're doing. So not only are you answering the questions correctly, but how quickly are you answering them, and how long have you been doing it. And the longer you do it and the faster you answer the questions, the bigger your meter fills up until it says that you've mastered this particular topic, and then you can move on to the next one. And there's a really good TED Talk by the guy who started Khan Academy, where they're doing this pilot program of bringing it into schools so that teachers can, you do your homework in the classroom and you watch the videos at home. So kind of flipping it on its head. So everyone watches the lecture that you would get at home for homework, and in a classroom everyone's working, and the teacher can see who's on which part and how well they're doing, and they compare people up who have like complementary strengths. So if you're like really good in one thing and not in the other, and someone else is the opposite, it automatically knows that, and you two will work together so that you can like cover each other's weaknesses and learn from one another. And they're seeing great results with this. I think that's really cool. But speaking of TED Talks, there's another really good TED Talk called Do Schools Kill Creativity by Sir Ken Robinson, which is A, really hilarious, and B, really interesting. And that's where I got the whole notion of, school systems are designed for industrial agrarian societies, and which we aren't anymore. And he goes into this and has a lot of great anecdotes about people he's interviewed, like really successful Broadway performers and things. One of the good stories is, I forget who this person was, but she choreographed Cats, and she's like one of the preeminent choreographers of Broadway. But when she was in elementary school, they basically, all of her teachers were concerned because she couldn't sit still, and she couldn't pay attention, and she wasn't good at any of these things. And then they brought her to a psychologist. They, talked to her and her mom and put her in the room, and then the psychologist said, "All right, your mom and I are going to step out." And on the way out, they turned the radio on, left, and then behind that like one-way mirror, they could see that she was dancing all over the place. And I think the line was, "Miss whatever your name is, your daughter doesn't have ADD. She's a dancer." But today it would probably be like, "You just need to try harder." Give
her some Ritalin and put her back in the classroom.
Right? Yeah, exactly. And then we wouldn't have. So those are my picks. They'll be in the show notes.
Outstanding. KhanAcademy.org, and you can look on YouTube. Do Schools Kill Creativity? Definitely both great picks. TED Talks, you gotta love them. Outstanding. Well, that sort of brings us to the end of the show. Dan or Kaylee, do either of you guys have anything you want to plug or slip into the end here before we go? I'll give you one last opportunity.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
Well, thank you for coming on, Kaylee. You can find Kaylee in Ireland soon.
Don't come find me, because that would be really creepy.
That would be strange. But we are so happy to have you on. You were an excellent resource. And I couldn't think of a better topic. And we'll have you on again sometime. Do they have internet in Ireland?
I believe they've gotten it, yes.
Okay, cool. So there'll be a lag with the distance the information has to travel, but we'll make it work. I do want to remind everyone out there listening that our website, don'tpanic.io, is where we archive all the audio and video versions of the show. You can always listen along. You can always watch along live. 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Tuesday nights at don'tpanic.io/live.html. I highly recommend you do it that way because we have a chat room there, and you can chat with the hosts as we do the show. This week we didn't do it because things were a little crazy, and I know we didn't have Colby on this week. He will join us next week. He was having too much fun in California to join us, but we will have him back. Or maybe we won't. We'll just keep Kailee on.
Yeah, screw that
I like
guy.
that idea better.
Yeah, get out of here. He's been replaced. Well, wonderful. And I want to thank everyone out there for listening and watching. And I will end every show the same way we always do to remind you, don't panic, because we will be back next week to talk more technology. Thank you for watching. Good night.